Hello, humans. Welcome to my session, How to Build a Site Template, in which I will tell you how to build a site template. The projector in the room I was just in was super temperamental, so that's a QR code linking to these slides in case the projector goes out and you want to follow along on your laptop. Might be a good idea. That's good thinking. I wasn't expecting that. If you don't know me, some of you definitely do, some of you definitely don't. My name is Adam. I go by phenaproxima on Drupal.org and on Slack and in various other channels. I am the lead architect of Drupal CMS and a core contributor in multiple subsystems, including the recipe system. And I used to maintain a distribution, which some of you probably have experience with, hopefully nothing too awful. And my current role, I am a staff software engineer at Acquia in the Drupal applications team. And today, site templates. What are they? Why are they? How do you make one? It's surprisingly less technical than I thought it was going to be when I submitted this session. And what the future holds, where we're going to go from here with this. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, I don't think this is any surprise, but I want to just quickly restate the problem. It's starting with Drupal kind of sucks. Or with Drupal core anyway, because you just don't get a lot. You have to invent the universe, to paraphrase Carl Sagan. And you install standards, you don't get anything. You have to go find what modules you want to use and install those modules. And this by itself can be intimidating, unless you're familiar with what you need. Unless you're familiar with Composer. And even if you are, you might not want to deal with it. Once you've got your modules found and all configured, you now have to make your site pretty, which is also a huge undertaking unless you know how the theme system works, which is very idiosyncratic, and you'll probably have to hire an expensive professional to help you with that. All of these problems are what site templates aim to solve, just making it easy to spin up from 0 to 95 out of 100. So this is because a site template, I would, in a nutshell, describe it as a recipe for a mostly finished website. And by mostly finished, I mean all those modules that you have to find and configure and figure out, that's all just done. Site pretty much works and is wired up the way that you want it to be, depending on what the use case of the site template is. If it's for a nonprofit, if it's for a nonprofit site, maybe you have a donations form, maybe you have some event calendars, whatever else a nonprofit site has. I don't build sites for a living, honestly. But it should all be pre-configured. If you're doing maybe more of an e-commerce thing, you have some product categories, you have a sense of how that all should fit together, and it's all just kind of set up, except for minor tweaks. It should also have a finished and polished look and feel, where it's mostly, and by look and feel, it's pretty much fits. It feels right for your brand. It feels right for the use case, and it's just needs again minor tweaks like changing some of the branding colors, changing the typography, different images, stuff like that. But otherwise, mostly finished, and it should have default content. A site template, ideally, shouldn't be lorem ipsum in a pretty package. It should be there should be some relevant pieces of content. In the Byte site template we created for Drupal CMS, for example, that's kind of a SaaS product website, or it's intended to be. And so we have a pricing page with a pricing widget. We have a nice homepage with all that just looks like a proper SaaS product homepage. We have a blog, because that's and the blog of course is all AI generated slop for the sample content, but that's okay. It should be relatively realistic. It should look and seem like something useful and relevant to a particular use case. And I was, while I was working on this, I was Umami to me is actually a really good example spiritually of a site template. It's obviously implemented a long time ago. It's an install profile. It's a little antiquated. But it checks all of these boxes. Umami is set up in such a way that it is a magazine site. It has some default articles, some default taxonomies. It has a particular theme, also a look and feel, but by theme I also mean it has a relevant use case. It's a food magazine. It has articles of recipes. It has articles about food. It has taxonomy terms that are food taxonomy terms. So I think that even though it was built as a demo, and I don't think anyone's ever actually launched with it. Umami, in my mind, is pretty much a prototypical example of what a site template is. But it is not a site template technically, because it is not a recipe. And site templates are recipes, they are always recipes, and they are really just recipes. They're not using any different technology stack. They use the recipe system exactly the way it was meant to be used. But they do approach, they're architected maybe a little differently than most recipes are. They do have a particular guiding philosophy about how, how you should build them and how you should approach building them. For one thing, most recipes, including the ones in Drupal CMS, are sort of built with composability in mind. Most recipes are intended to be applied. They do some relatively small change, and they do it well. And you can do it at any time in the life cycle of a site, well after you've launched it. That's most recipes. Site templates don't really have to care about that. Site templates are something that you choose once. You choose one at the beginning of the site. When you're starting the site for the first time, you choose one, you use it, it spins you up into a 95% finished site, and then you throw it away. Because of that, there's also, as with all recipes, there's no update path. You do not have to worry about breaking existing sites because you changed your site template. That's not how recipes work. As I said, most recipes focus a little bit on functionality and setting up one thing. The main focus of a site template is probably more on the default content in the presentation, really getting a website that feels like a website, that feels finished. And the final thing, and this isn't really site template specific, is Drupal CMS 2 is trying to optimize for site templates and to really be the platform of choice for building site templates and starting a site with a site template. And it's not to say that Drupal CMS has a monopoly on this. You can, because this is the recipe system, this is a core thing, you can build a site template with anything, or really any version of Drupal, but we recommend Drupal CMS. I'm obviously biased. But we also give you some scaffolding, we give you some tools that are useful. We also have the installer experience that is, I guess nicer than Forms, and has, has site template specific plumbing in it. So, yeah. To recap, if you take away nothing else, a site template should get you 95% of the way to a finished site, ideally built on Drupal CMS. Even if not, Drupal CMS is meant to be the optimal platform for launching with a site template, for starting with a site template. And they really just are one-off recipes that you use once at the beginning of a site. You do not have to worry about, or you don't really have to build a site template with the idea that you will combine more than one site template. That's not the idea. Focusing mostly on content and presentation. There you go. That's my recap. So, here's how to build it. It's surprisingly simple. Long story short, the process of building a site template is just the process of building a site. However you'd like to do that. The only difference being that when you are done building the site, you export it as a recipe and can publish it on Drupal.org in order to share it with the world, right? So I would say it's 3 steps, 4 if you publish it. One is just start with the foundation, start with the base layer. I recommend Drupal CMS, but these are all recommendations, not requirements. I do think that, Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but the marketplace might initially want people to be building site templates with Drupal CMS. So, okay, strong recommendation that you build on Drupal CMS, but not a requirement. It does give you everything, though. It gives you the tools for site templates. It gives you a bunch of useful recipes right out of the gate that are very helpful to get your site template into a, so you don't have to just configure the admin UI and set up certain basic things for content types. It helps. Another thing to be aware of is that site templates should have default content, right? Until very recently, it was not possible to export content into a recipe without using the default content module from Contrib. That's changed. in Drupal 11.3 core, we have that ability in core now to export content. It's only in 11.3, but I made a core patch up there that you should get for 11.2, which will give you the default content export functionality. And you'll want that if you're making a site template. You'll also probably want that helper module, Drupal CMS helper. Even if you're not using Drupal CMS, it doesn't require you to use Drupal CMS. It just gives some additional helpful tools. And that module has a drush command that I wrote to export the whole site as a recipe. So I recommend using it. Not necessary, but I recommend it. After that, the next step is complete creative freedom. Build the site you want to build however you want to build it. There aren't really any rules here. You can use any kind of content types you like, any kind of modules you like, any workflows you like, any parts, any page builder. We recommend Canvas, obviously, because it's great, but you could use anything. You could just use a regular layout builder if you want to. And really, this is just a normal site building process. I would just say, build a site you're really proud of, build a site that looks good, that you love, that is useful, that you would want people to use. But it's building a client site and you're the client, so go crazy here. And I will mention about the presentation layer. Ideally, you could just use Canvas for everything to completely create the look and feel from, oh, this isn't fine. Let's hold on. Ideally, you could just use Canvas to create the look and feel from top to bottom, and you wouldn't need to have a custom theme at all, or, honestly, really any special theme beyond, say, Mercury as a starting kit, which if you were in the other session, the one that just took place, that Pam was in, and Jason, Mercury is a theme, well, it's a component library, it's packaged as a theme, and it's created as a starter kit for making a look and feel for a site template. It's very Canvas friendly, it uses SPCs. And ideally you wouldn't need to have a custom theme, but right now due to just Canvas needing a little bit more features, a little bit more power in terms of some customizations, you'll probably need to make a custom theme on top of Mercury that forks it, that uses Mercury as a starter kit. And that's what we did for Byte, honestly, because we had to. It's just the state of things right now. We'll get out of that. That's okay though. You need to make a custom theme for your site template. That's all right. Not a big deal. But yeah, other than that, build the site you love. Put everything in it that you want. Just make it look exactly the way you like. Third step is take that and export it as a recipe. So this is the part where a week ago I was working on these slides at home, and these were a lot more technical. There was a lot more like fiddly command line things that I was going to be like, well, you got to go do this. Remember to remove the UUID keys. It was so stupid. And I was like, this is just going to suck. People are going to go with this, and this is going to suck, and they're going to hate it. So I spent a couple of days hacking together a drush command that takes your site and just exports all of it, all config, all content, no questions asked, into a recipe, and generates a recipe.yaml, a minimal one. And I tested it with Umami, and it works. You can install the site from it using drush SI, which I don't know. How many of you knew that drush SI will take a path to a recipe and just install it? Well, now the rest of you know, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, and it'll generate a recipe that you can install the site from. As I say, I tested it with Umami, which I will show you. And it works. It just reconstitutes Umami. So cool. It also works with multilingual, I'm happy to say, as of today. So yeah, this is just super easy. One command, you get a recipe that will probably work. I don't doubt there are bugs in it, but as you start building site templates, if you find problems, just let us know. We'll fix them. I'll fix them. And yeah, that's honestly kind of it. You might want to add a screenshot of the site template and that's specifically for the Drupal CMS installer, because when you open it up, you get a really nice grid of the site templates. It shows the screenshots if you have screenshots, so ideally you add a screenshot. But yeah, that's the process. Spin up Drupal CMS. You can do this with Drupal CMS 1, by the way. You don't need to wait for 2.0. And make a site, make a beautiful site, make a site you love that you want to share, and then make it a recipe with that. And then, assuming you want to share it, publish it. The way to do that is, because site templates are recipes, they need to be general projects on Drupal.org. They're not modules, they're not themes, they're recipes, thus general projects. If you had to create a custom theme to get your site template to the right look and feel that you want, publish that separately as a theme project and have your site template depend on it in composer.json. That's an annoying shim, but okay, you gotta do it. You gotta do what you gotta do. Don't worry about the scaffolding. Don't worry about the composer create project part of it. You could just use Drupal CMSs. As I said, we're optimized for site templates, so the ideal is, and this is a little bit future state, but the ideal is that you would do composer create project Drupal CMS. You get the Drupal CMS installer, and you can choose a site template. Now, having said that, we don't have a marketplace yet. We don't have the ability to show you site templates that are just out there in the world. But someday we will. Long story short, don't worry about the scaffolding. Don't worry about the installer. Drupal CMS takes care of that. You can create your own project scaffolding. You can create your own install profile to make the installer cool however you want. Again, we don't lock you in. There's no requirements here. This is just advice. And that's it. That's the whole thing. You done made a site template now. Congrats. Please don't call it Drupal CMS when you publish it. That's my one request. And I ask people about, I mentioned this in Atlanta too. If you, I'm going to use a really contrived example, but if you make a site template called Thunder, and you build it on Drupal CMS, don't publish it under the name of Drupal CMS Thunder or Thunder for Drupal CMS, because that will just be confusing and weird, and we have nothing to do with it. So yeah, that's basically it. Caveat over. That's the next slide I got. Oh yeah. So if you want to take a look at this, like at the code level, if you're curious, that's the URL to Byte. Byte is currently merged into the Drupal CMS 2 code base. We're going to split it out, hopefully sometime this week. But you can still go look at it. And Byte is an example of a site template that was not built the way I just told you, where we made it visually and then exported it. This is one where we kind of sculpted it by hand, and a lot of that is because of, we were also having Canvas be a very fast-moving target at the same time, and also we were building the Mercury component library, which it's using at the same time. So we had to kind of make this one by hand, but it is an example of a site template. It's legit. That is doing a site template by hand and very carefully kind of sculpting it and architecting it is also a legitimate way to have a recipe. It doesn't have to be a huge bucket of config. Although that's also fine. Recipes have no update path. If you publish initially a recipe that's a huge bucket of config and content, that's okay. You can change it. You can always refactor it later. You can split it out into smaller recipes. If there's some functionality that you think is very useful that other sites might want, you can make that its own recipe. No problem. You won't break anything. So I would encourage you to look at that. It's maybe more developer-y. But I'm also going to live demo something. And I bet this was working an hour ago. I got to put this. This was working an hour ago. I don't know if it's going to be working now. But, oh my goodness, okay. Where'd that go? There it is. So I made, this right here is what I generated from, I'm not going to show you the process of this because it's literally install Umami, Drush site export. Hey, look, I made something. But this is like if we consider Umami as an example of a fully built site that I want to make into a site template, this is what came out of Drush site export. This is all of Umami's configuration with the core and UUID keys removed so that it's recipe friendly. It's got translations in there somewhere. It has a composer.json that was generated listing all the modules and themes that were installed. And it has a recipe.yaml that is fairly long but also fairly minimal at the same time for reasons that aren't really worth going into, honestly. It also has all the content in Umami exported from, using Core's exporter with that core patch I mentioned. And okay, cool. So that pretty much covers it, right? It has a little screenshot for the installer. So I just want to show you what that looks like when you install it. Do I have Drush SQL drop? Yeah. Let's just make sure I have a clean database. I bet you anything it breaks. It should work, but it's not great. Let's try it. Umami, the recipe. So yeah, if you have a site template in your code base, you can choose it. You only choose one. We'll try that. And do that. And shut up. And yeah, it installs without errors, right? I hope without errors. It's amazingly fast compared to like Drupal CMS normally. I don't know what changed. It's umami. Thank you. It's umami. It has all the translations. I want to emphasize that because just hell yeah. Hell yes, it's multilingual. But it's got all the things. It's got all of the taxonomies, all of the images, all the assets. They're just all there. The admin UI is exactly as you left it. This is the magic of config and content export and the magic of recipes together. So, survived my live demo. Whew. And that brings me to where we go next. I think where we go next is with these tools. This is about as easy as I could make it. I want you to go out and make a lot of site templates. Make beautiful ones. Make ones that you want to share. I think that this is, I'd like to think that this is empowering for site builders, people who really have a good eye for design, people who really understand how to deliver great sites with Drupal. And I want you to be able to deliver those and share them with people. So yeah, and also the more site templates you build, the more great site templates you build, the more great examples there are in the world to follow. So go, fly, do things. I'm also hoping that as we do this, like this is all very new, right? There's really only one site template that exists right now, which is Byte. And that's experimental, we had to feel our way through that. So I'm hoping that as we go on, we get best practices emerging that we can document and finalize. And I'd love to see some good documentation about what the best practices for site templates are. I think we also need more, better tooling. Bulk content export in core would be great. Right now, the ability to export all the content is something I just shimmed into that Drush command. Ideally, core would do that. Right now, it only lets you export one entity at a time, which is very painful, and that's part of the reason why I made that thing. I'm like, nobody wants to do this. Having a smarter recipe generator would be good. Right now, here's the thing, like what Drush site export will give you is really a pretty dumb recipe. It'll be a giant pile of all your config and all your content just slapped together, which is fine. I mean, that's legit. But it would be better, I think, to have it be able to, wouldn't it be cool if it could split out smaller recipes that were also useful and you could kind of stitch them together? I think that would be neat. I'm not going to be the one to build it. This is probably the part where I should mention the thing that I don't want to mention. But probably there's an AI use case in there somewhere. I would love to move the export into the UI just so that you do not need to touch the command line for it, because I have a vision of people spinning up with the Drupal CMS launcher app and building a site with that and then exporting it and never having to even know that Drush exists. Not that I have a problem with Drush. There's also, as I mentioned, as the marketplace comes along, hopefully, the ability to choose any template from the installer or any maybe of a set of recommended templates with some ability to customize that. I'd love to see that. And Canvas also is a big deal here, since Canvas really hopefully enables that visual site building and removes the need for a custom theme, removes any need for a custom theme. So more power to Canvas is what I hope we get. Further resources here, we wrote a few months ago, we wrote this issue in kind of semi-formal, not really formal, but mostly informal RFC style issue, just explaining some of these guidelines about how site templates should be approached, how they should be put together, and what some of their assumptions are. I encourage you to read it. There was some really good discussion in that issue that came out of it. If you are, this is maybe more developer aimed, but if you are interested in, if you've made a site template and you want to start splitting it apart, refactoring it, cleaning it up in certain ways, The recipe initiative documentation is a great place to start. It's very good documentation. It will explain how to write, really how to write recipes. But you can also ignore it. You can just make a site template. It can just be a big bucket of stuff. And that's also cool. And find us on Slack. These here channels, Drupal CMS development, Drupal CMS templates and recipes. I hang out in all of them. So I will probably just show up and start saying things. And yeah, if you want to refer back to the slide deck, there's the keynote for it again. And I think that's it. I think that's the end of my. Yeah, okay. You can ask me things now. Any questions?
So you kind of touched it a little bit, so distribution is dead, I believe.
Yeah, that was my last session.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yes, distributions is dead was my last session.
Oh, right. I did not know that. So recipe, so the site template is kind of a recipe type.
It is a recipe type.
Right.
I mean, it's a recipe. Yeah.
Right. And you just do one time, and then there is an install profile in this picture somewhere.
Not necessarily.
No?
No. The cool thing is that Drush, the core installer actually just supports installing a site from a recipe. It natively supports that. You do not need to use an install profile. One of the things Drupal CMS gives you for free is it gives you an install profile that makes the installer look nice, kind of puts site templates front and center, changes the UX a little bit, but that's optional. You don't have to use it. Having said that, Core's installer, like the default install UI, doesn't give you a way to choose a site template. So, if you want to give people an interface to change a site template at install time, it's really either the Drupal CMS installer, some install profile you write, in which case, God be with you, because sheesh. Or it's Drush SI.
Yeah, the final one. So in that case, like we are using install profile for regular site updates, like a config updates, and we're using content updates as well. Like so, we use default module with install profile, so that after the launch, you still have the install profile for the config sync. When you do the Drush deploy, you're still running all the config changes from the profile.
Yeah.
And then if you're a developer joining the project for the first time, you still run the install profile so that you get, like up-to-date content config changes.
Yeah.
So how does it change with the site template?
So if you're going to want to do like running updates like that, where you continually update it, this is not for you. That is where install profiles are actually okay, because those do give you lock-in. And those do give you like, okay, I actually am in control, like I, the developer, am kind of more in control here and can try to deliver updates. I mean, all the caveats apply about doing updates. Update paths are hard. This is part of the reason why recipes don't do them. But with a site template or really any recipe, it's just a starting point. It's just a starting point. When the site applies the recipe, either at install time with a site template or at any point, it owns the result of that. End of story. So no update paths. Yeah.
So my question is probably around about talking about the publish step. Let's say you have a theme that already exists in Drupal.org, and you've got a demo site that kind of shows it off, and then you want to just kind of get the patch in there and export it all. Where does that go? How do you create a project on Drupal.org and then?
How do you do it? Like so the question then is like you have already a demo site, like is it an install profile?
It just exists.
It just exists. Okay. I guess, well, you have the theme as a separate project, right? So that's, okay, that helps. I think what I would try is I would get that site spun up however you normally do it. I would run Drush site export, and then if you have the thing published as a general project already, then you could probably just branch another major branch off it, change its composer project type to Drupal recipe, and off you go in a new branch. I would maybe approach it that way. If it's not a general project, I might go whining to Neil Drum for help to maybe change the project type. But that would be my general approach, or just publish it under a new name. There could be that too.
Or maybe, yeah. If you have a theme, then theme underscore recipe or something like that.
Well, I can tell you what we're doing for Byte, because it has a custom theme, right? Built as a fork of Mercury. We're literally going to be publishing 2 projects, Byte and Byte Theme, and I already have the namespaces.
But you already have your theme, so you
Yeah. So yeah, if you already have the demo site as its own project, you're kind of already sitting pretty where you need to be, and then you just want to convert that the one that's not the theme.
You just need a new general project.
I think I need a new general project for the recipe.
That's
And the
fine.
theme will just compose a
And that would
thing.
work. That would work fine. Cool. Oh, okay.
Thank you. I was wondering how this worked with recipes dependencies.
Recipes dependencies.
So if you create your site using recipes, does it keep this dependency or it adds everything from the recipe to your new recipe?
That's my favorite dependency hell. So if you use are you familiar with the recipe unpack plugin? Okay, so in Drupal 11.2, Alex, right there, created this composer plugin called Drupal Recipe Unpack. It actually works with any version of Drupal. You don't need 11.2. And what it does is when you use Composer to install a recipe, it transfers all of those dependencies into your project's composer.json, which allows you to just delete the recipe when you're done with it. And I would highly, highly recommend using that. Once again, to endorse Drupal CMS, it uses that out of the box. So if you start with Drupal CMS, you have that already. There's some documentation on Drupal.org somewhere, and I can find it for you, which explains how to set it up in an existing site if you don't have it set up. But that's how we handle recipe dependencies, just move those dependencies out or copy those dependencies into the project so that you don't need it. And if you use a site template being a recipe, if you spin it up into a site that already has the Unpack plugin, all of those dependencies are going to be transferred over. So the Unpack plugin basically solves this problem. It was built to solve this problem. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
For those who already have a profile for our projects, how would you recommend modernizing our process, creating a profile with usage recipes to initialize the project, or would you use a recipe which uses the profile? Which way around?
A recipe can't really use a profile that I'm aware of anyway, unless Alex has some magic up his sleeve I don't know about. So, I mean, I think that the way I see it, the only reason you need an install profile at this point is if you want to control update paths in such a way. Like, if you still need to do that, you should keep using an install profile. They're good at that. But if you want to combine the things, if you want to have an install profile and recipes, here's the thing. Like, the thing about an install profile is that it stays installed, right? And Drupal treats it as a module. That's why it can have update hooks, although this is sort of dark magic we're getting into. But like, that's the main reason to have it. So if you want to have it both ways, which I don't know if I recommend, but if you really insist, you could have a profile that uses recipes to kind of spin things up, and then the profile stays installed and tries to do updates to them. But that way may lie madness. You've been warned.
We use profiles since 5-6 years. I think we are 3 years on the same profile, and we update it on the different sites. It works as far.
If it works for you, I wouldn't change what wasn't broken. Honest. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks. I have two, but I'll start with one that might be a yes/no.
Okay.
So is the process today, if I want to use the site template, do I have to do my create project with Drupal/CMS and then Composer require my site template and then run through the installer? Or are these things getting packaged together, or is there a plan to package
Like if you wanted to use Byte, for example?
Well, like if I made my own and published it as a general project, how would I then start a new site from that template? Would I have to?
I would, what I would do is I would probably do, Composer create project Drupal CMS, Composer require the site template, and then, DDEV launch to spin up and go into the installer, where we'll automatically detect the site template being there.
Or
Um,
Drush aside.
yeah.
Drush aside.
Yeah, if you don't want to touch Drupal CMS for some reason, then Drush SI would also work.
Yeah. So the other question, and what about like configurable recipes? Like I don't want to publish a site template that contains like my Google Tag Manager ID. I want the user to be able to select that. Is there something that's going to happen with that, or do you just put a dummy in for now?
I didn't write that yet, but what I think, this is sort of something that me and Pam would have to talk about, but what I would like to do is that in the installer, if you are choosing a site template that is going to ask for, that needs input at some level, it should ask up front for that. I just haven't gotten around to writing that yet.
But you do have to obviously to pull that out if you have to put anything you don't want. Right now it's just everything else.
Yeah.
So we are also maintaining kind of a distribution in start profile and modules which are terraforming our sites. And we run into the issues that configurations bundle to those modules, install profiles becomes outdated. Best case is just the order changes, worst case they are completely not compatible with the recent version of the module. So have you thought about how to keep the bundled configuration in the recipe up to date in time?
Up to date in time, like with the modules in question, that depends on?
We could run regression tests on every recipe application, whether they fail or not clearly. Maybe that will solve the problem, but how to re-export the up-to-date configuration of the module to a recipe, for example.
That's a really good question, actually. I'm not 100% sure I have a quick answer to that one. And I think the reason I don't have a quick answer to that one is because it would depend a lot on what your individual process is and kind of like how you manage this stuff. I definitely think that having regression or like smoke tests to make sure that the recipe continually applies against the latest versions of the dependencies is a very good idea. I'd like there to be like a generic test in core somewhere where it's like, just test that this recipe works, and then the recipe can just always extend that test, and then at least you have the one test where it's like, yes, I know the recipe will at least apply against the latest stuff, and then if your config becomes outdated, you'll at least know about it. But yeah, as far as like how to bring it up to date, I don't know if I have a specific answer on that.
Yeah, verification could be easy, and this recipe applies test in some places whether that's idempotent and applicable, but it doesn't tell you whether it's up to date yet, or when you see it failing, then you what to do.
I think Alex might have an answer on this, honestly.
Yeah.
So, was that an answer or a question?
I can offer some ideas.
I'm so glad he's here.
So one of the great things that Adam has done is that he's built this command that exports your entire site, and he's exported it as a recipe which you can install. So that means that we can have GitLab install from the same versions of those modules that it did at the time it exported, run composer update, and then run Drush updates, and then export everything. And then that's your new up-to-date feature.
I haven't tested that, but that's a really interesting idea.
I do this for a client project with a module which just has a GitLab drop that does the same thing. It installs the module at the installed versions, does a composer update, and then exports over. I'm looking forward to bringing that to like general GitLab functionality.
Cool.
But it will work.
Well, I'm glad you did that. Saving my ass, I think. Any other questions? Back.
Continue the approach Alex suggested. I think the missing link for that is when updates to modules which include different recipe happens, we have no webhooks from Drupal to notify about innovate, vote, or whatever to run this pipeline Alex suggested. It's the missing piece of Drupal.
More
to find a way to update that somehow.
better DevOps, yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, one day, some beautiful day.
I have more like simple questions. So
Sure.
first of all,
Yeah.
site templates that we see during the installation. So how installation profile knows that this is site template out of thousands of recipes that you have.
I love that you asked that because I was going to mention it and I totally freaking forgot. The recipe.yaml has a type key in it. That type, if it is site with a capital S, anything with that type is a site template. And that's actually mentioned in the RFC issue, where the site templates must have type site in order to be identifiable as a site template.
Yes.
That's
And another
mentioned.
question about this umami example.
Yeah.
You said that it's multilingual, and you showed the config folder, but there was no language folder inside. Like how then it's...
I just think I didn't scroll down all the way,
okay.
but it's there. I tested it, I swear to God, like 2 hours ago.
No, you showed us.
So like for all recipes now we can have this language folder and it will be with translations.
I mean, here's the thing. The language folder is generated from doing a kind of a normal config export. So that's just sort of a snapshot of the way core is storing this stuff internally. But theoretically, yes. I don't know. I have, America syndrome, where only one language exists in the world, and so I don't know what will happen if you try to kind of handcraft that. But in theory, yes, that's how it would work. Like translations are divided by collection like that in the language folder.
Yeah, the question was also, there is a reason why config folder of recipe doesn't have install and optional and other folders, because I thought it was just taken from the root. Like how then this multilingual is solved?
Yeah, I mean, recipes don't have a concept of optional. They just, you built recipes for Drupal CMS, so you know. But yeah, they don't have the concept of optional. Like any config that's in the recipe is just coming in, And
it doesn't matter in which folder it is, like the structure.
Yeah, it's recursively looking in the config directory. Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah. All good? We all done? Cool. Thank you. Thank you.